I want to thank you all for joining us in welcoming Lara and Matt for this month's author reading. And I want to thank you for however you found out about us, whether it was our newsletters or through Lara and the Athenaeum's social media, um, news outlets, whichever way you read about us. And we'd love to hear that feedback sometimes. So you will also get a post-event survey asking what you thought of it and how we could improve or what was perfect about it and what you'd like to see us hosting in the future, both authors as well as workshops, presentations. We are so thankful to have this adult programming available. We receive a lot of grants from foundations, from the Central Berkshire Fund of the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, as well as additional funding from the Fairfield Foundation and Nina Tech. We have upcoming programs, which I'm not going to elaborate now, but you can go to becketathenaeum.org for the information. You will begin getting our newsletters. You can always opt out, but they will let you know what we have coming up. I do ask so that we can give good feedback to our foundations. If you're not on video or if you have more than one of you there, if you would just put in the chat message how many are attending so that we can keep an accurate attendee list for our reports to the foundations on what we've been doing. And I will periodically during it, the presentation, the author reading, put some info in the chats, both links to Lara, links to Lenox books. So keep that in mind. If you want to have subtitles, if you go to the bottom right on your screen, on your Zoom screen, and click on more, it'll say show subtitles if you want to be able to have that. So keep that in mind. But for now, I'm going to turn everything over to Lara and to Matt. If everyone would please make sure you are muted, okay? And I will monitor that as well to make sure it's just Lara and Matt who have the mic, okay? Enjoy.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. I'm so appreciative and grateful that I get to launch this book at my local library virtually and with Matt. So thank you. And thanks everyone for coming.
These are more people than I've seen in one room in 12 and a half months. So I'm very pleased to be part of this. Lara, thank you very much. And this is a lovely book. And thank you, Mary Bisbee Beek, for bringing it to me. And we're going to start when I'm going to ask Lara some questions. And then she's going to read a little bit from a couple of the stories as well. Let's just start with asking you, Lara, for everybody's sake, where did you come from and when did you start writing? And have you always wanted to be a writer? Because I think you are a writer, because you write.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, Matt. I am from Boothbay, Maine, a proud Mainer, but I've lived in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts for the past, 11 years now. I don't know when I become a local. I don't know if that ever happens in the Berkshires.
Two more generations.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. That's how it is in Maine. So
in Maine also, right?
Yeah, yeah. I always had a writing habit from a very young age. I had a journal, and I was kind of obsessive about it at times, and always did that, always scribbled. But I always loved music as well. So I think I had these dueling passions. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to focus on until I got to college. And even then I took a lot of English literature courses and a lot of music classes. And I think in my life, I've managed to fuse those two loves together. But writing has certainly been a constant theme.
The music shows up in the stories. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So why don't you start telling us about some of the locations of now? Nobody here has read the book yet, have you? Jody, did you read it? Have you read any of it in the advanced copy?
Mary has read it.
Mary has read it.
Yes,
right,
I
right,
have read some of it.
right,
Yes.
right.
Jill
So
Tupper has read it. Jill
so
Tupper.
we'll have to you'll have to start telling us about some of the locations.
Yeah.
They're set in Maine, certainly,
Yeah.
and I love the settings in Maine, and the I'm a little familiar with Maine. I've traveled through it. I'm not familiar with the United Arab Emirates, with Grenada, with Japan. But your characters are all over the map. You want to tell us about that a little?
Yeah, I've had the good fortune to travel a lot in my life. During my 20s, in particular, some of you know this about me. I worked on a cruise ship as an entertainer right out of college, and that brought me to many locales that are featured in the book. But in terms of basing stories on places I've actually been to, some I have been to and some I haven't, some I made up. But I've certainly spent a lot of time in Japan, where one story is set. And I have spent time in the United Arab Emirates. I was a lounge singer after I left the cruise ship gig. I worked in hotels singing. And that was an experience. So certainly some of those details have bled into the stories. I love to start with a setting. I love to start with a place when I'm writing. That feels comfortable for me. It's something absolute. It's something I can describe. It sort of grounds me in the story. And from there, I see what happens. So I think that's why so many different locales made their way into the book. And it begins and ends in Maine in terms of the stories. And I think for me, that feels fitting because there's this theme running through about finding home and finding a place that feels like home. And certainly, although I love the Berkshires, Maine will always be my home, my first home. And I wanted that to come across in the book as well.
Was that a basic idea that you were going to start and end in Maine? Did you have that idea at the very beginning?
I didn't. I'm not one of those writers that really knows what they're doing when they start. I sort of fumble along. I start with, as I said, a place, but I don't ever know where I'm going. It's always a surprise to me. It's always kind of exhilarating and frustrating to not know where I'm going, but that's how I do it. Once I had all the stories written and when I was happy with them, the process of figuring out the order and the sequence was the next step, and it just seemed right to begin and end in Maine.
So we'll talk a little bit about the process a little later. The process of writing that you're starting with the setting and then creating the characters and putting them in. But let's talk a little bit about how many stories in the collection altogether? Is it 12?
11.
11 stories.
11. Yeah.
And how many are set on cruise ships?
Let's see. I think 2 are set on cruise ships, and there's one that mentions cruise ships. That's sort of the goal, to get on the ship in one. A young girl in Maine is thinking about working on a cruise ship. Imagine that in one story.
And that must have been. I mean, you didn't know anybody else who had ever done that, did you? Worked on a cruise ship?
I didn't. No, and it happened by accident, really. I had done a semester abroad in England at University of Sussex in Brighton. And after I finished college, I ran right back to London. I loved being there so much. I decided I would live in London for a while. And I auditioned for all kinds of things. In retrospect, I'm not sure I was even allowed to. I didn't have a visa or anything. Hopefully no one will come back and arrest me because of that retroactively. But I auditioned for all sorts of things. I'd been studying English literature and dabbling in music until that time. And I decided I really want to sing. I really want to perform. And so I auditioned for all kinds of things. I didn't get any callbacks. My student visa was almost up. And then I auditioned for a cruise ship and got a call back. And I at least one dear friend, my former roommate is here tonight, Sarah Dyer from Wales. She's an amazing pianist, and we became close friends on the ship. So lovely to see her face here. But I ended up on the ship. I thought it was going to be a 1-month thing, and I ended up over the course of 2 years working on the ship, and it was such a wild experience. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was lots of ups and downs, lots of drama within a very contained place where a lot of performers, a lot of drama, but you wake up and you're in a new place every day. And for a gal from Maine, that was just incredible and enticing and so memorable. And so I ended up setting some stories in or around the cruise ship.
Yeah. And it's I could feel the ship moving. So a couple of times. You want to read a little bit from one of the stories?
Sure. I feel like I should read from a cruise ship one, but I'm actually going to read from a Maine one because I want to. So hopefully that's okay.
It is your show, my friend.
Yeah, and I know we have Mainers here today as well, including my dear mother, Jill Tupper, my strongest supporter. So okay. I will read from the title story, Amphibians. The girl can swim far, which scares her father. She likes the immersion, her limbs easing through. While floating and watching tips of pines, it's possible to imagine she's not human at all. The water in her ears is how she hears things. Buoyancy is all she's permitted to feel. She can envision a different kind of existence, one where swimming is required to survive. At school, there's a boy who believes the girl is responsible for Jesus's death. He boasts about his father's anti-Semitic tattoo, and when he's captain, he picks her last for teams. She's interested in this boy because of his serious eyes and because he runs faster than anyone else in gym. The girl knows she's responsible for the shifts in volume and temperature in her parents' house and assumes it's the same on the lake. It's not always unpleasant. She's an experiment, a source of interest. The spotlight beams down, microscopic cells smushed between glass slides. No one knows where she is, what she is, or how she'll turn out. Stop there.
Okay, so that's our first main character. And what's her name?
She's nameless. She's the girl in that story.
Right.
And nameless.
But she shows up in other stories with other names, and I really I can find little tinges of, oh, I know who that is.
Yeah,
I know who that is, and then I say to myself as I'm reading, did she make that up on the spot? Did she know where she was going as a writer? Were you surprised? This is one of the questions I really wanted to ask you were you surprised by some of what your characters do or say? Did you find you're gonna write a story and something is going to happen? Well, did something happen unexpectedly because of the character?
Yeah, I think that often happens. I edit and revise a lot, like most writers. I start, as I said, with place, and I sort of see what the character is doing and where they might go. But often the path I have loosely planned out for them isn't right, and I end up changing it. So I think in that way I am surprised, but it also feels quite deliberate. I'm someone who cuts and cuts and cuts. I might start with a story that's 40 pages and it ends up being 10. So it feels as though maybe the characters are surprising me, but it's more as though I'm manipulating them. It's it's
Okay.
a beautiful feeling of control, really. You get to play around with your own universe.
You create these characters. You're creating the whole thing, and as soon as we open the pages, we're in that world. It's a great responsibility that you have, but it's that great freedom. Let's talk about the a couple of the stories. We talk about the body, and in that first story, amphibians, and then in belly dancing, which is set in the UAE, and Dish Dash. Where is that set? That's
set in
also
Dubai. Yeah.
it's also in Dubai, right?
Dubai
You
and
want, you,
Abu
you want to talk
Dhabi.
about the in the title story? I'm going to quote this. She wants to say, the chill of the water, it doesn't last. Most grown-ups can only think about the smack of it, the dread. This is what it means to get older. So this is the girl understanding about what the future is for her or for anybody. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Sure. Yeah. Ramona Osabel, who judged the Leapfrog fiction contest, and this book came out of that. She had wonderful things to say about. She had wonderful interpretations of the book that I never would have seen. I so appreciated her reading and her summary, because sometimes when you're writing, you're too immersed and you don't really see the bigger picture. It takes someone else to see it. And she said those lovely things about being in the body, and I so appreciate her words. I think I'm very interested in the transition between girlhood and womanhood, and what that's like for the person experiencing it, but also some of the things imposed upon the person experiencing it, the expectations that shift from girl to woman. And I think that was subconsciously in my head as I was writing many of these stories. I wasn't necessarily setting out to write about the body, but I think that comes through again and again. And I think as a performer, personally, and also reflecting on the characters in the book, you're constantly being assessed. That's your job. You're on a stage and you're being assessed in a spotlight. And for me, it's a creepy and wonderful feeling at the same time to be in the spotlight. Everybody likes to have a little bit of attention, but I think for me as an introvert, it was always a little bit horrible as well to be in the spotlight. So I think I was thinking about that throughout as well, the weird sensation of being on view, what that means to a performer, what that means to a girl going through adolescence. And I think it comes back to this idea of being amphibious, of going from one stage to another, and adapting to different places, different times in your life, different people that you're interacting with. So
Is that why we call this Amphibians? Is that
yeah,
let's
yeah.
talk about that title.
Okay.
And I meant to mention that the congratulations, because you've won the Leapfrog, what is it, the Global Fiction Prize
Thank you.
with this book. This is you won the prize
Thank you.
for
Thank
this
you.
book.
Yeah,
And then so Amphibians, and it is National Frog. Is it National Frog Day or International Frog Day?
well, let's call it international. Let's just make it up here. No,
They hop across borders for
that's
sure.
right. That's right.
So and what's the epigram? The epigraph. I mean, the amphibian is only ever as warm as the day.
The amphibian is only ever as warm as the day. I was on a plane. Remember that, being on planes? I can barely remember, but I was on a plane watching the TV in front of me, and I tuned into Extreme Baby Animals, as you do on long flights. I think I was coming back from Ireland, and I love everything about Extreme Baby Animals, and that was a quote about amphibians. The amphibian is only ever as warm as the day. And I like that because it speaks to this idea that others might be affecting your experience, whether you want them to or not. And I hope by the end of this book, certain characters have found some agency. They're not depending on others to warm them up. They're building that heat from within. So
right.
so that's what happened. But I do want to take a moment to thank, I think Tobias Steed is here, and he's my UK publisher from Can of Worms Press. And I'm so grateful for all the work he's done to make this book available in the UK. It's really been thrilling. So thank you, Tobias, if you're here.
Do you want to talk a
Thank
little
you,
bit?
Lara, very much. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yes.
Great. Do you want to talk a little bit more about music and music in the book, in the stories?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. What do I want to say about that? Yeah, there are some musicians in the book. There are dancers in the book.
Yeah. So on the cruise ship, were you hired as a singer and a dancer?
I was, and that was the first grave mistake on the part of the people that hired me. I took dance classes when I was little. My mother, who is here, Jill, is a tremendous dancer. She's professionally trained. She's, good. And I think she had great hopes for me. It did not work out. I have a hard time remembering steps, which is kind of crucial when you're doing the steps. So I had a really hard time on the cruise ship. They hired me as a singer dancer. I somehow faked my way into the can line and all kinds of things that I shouldn't have been doing. This is a very brief aside, but it's kind of an interesting story. I was thrown into a can number on the ship. Maybe Sarah Dyer remembers this. And the can da 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 da, and you're kicking, and someone next to you is crouching, and the person swings their leg over you. I don't know if you can picture this, but anyway. Okay. I was supposed to duck at a certain time, and a leg was supposed to go over my head, and I didn't duck in time, and the leg came crashing into my head. I passed out on stage in front of the entire audience and had to crawl off stage, and had probably what I can see now as a concussion for a little while after. So that's an example of my dancing prowess on the ship. So
don't tell your mother that story.
Too late. But yeah, soon after that, I wasn't in as many dance numbers suddenly on the cruise ship for some reason. But yeah, I should have been hired as a singer. But it was the kind of ship where they have you do all kinds of things. So I was also an aerobics instructor and a shuffleboard tournament leader, and anything you can imagine. So they had us working, 12-hour days, and I learned a lot and made some lovely friendships there, but it was not as glamorous as I thought it was going to be.
So let's talk about some of the other characters, not the dancers. Well,
okay, yeah, I got sidetracked there. I forgot what we were talking about.
But so in the middle of the book, between Maine and Maine, we have people who are traveling, and are they a little lost? Are they running away? Are they finding themselves? You want to?
Yeah, I think, I grew up in a small town, Boothbay, Maine. And when I was growing up, I think there were very few opportunities to really delve into the arts. I was in chorus and the drama club, and I took tap classes at the YMCA, which of course didn't help me later on at all. But I did what I could in a small town, and there are amazing opportunities now in that same town, thanks to some art lovers who've really made opportunities for younger people there. But when I was growing up there in the 70s and 80s, there was not a lot. And I think I was always looking outward. I was always thinking, out of my town, there will be chances to, not feel like the freak because I'm picked last in gym, or, not feel like not feel out of place because I love listening to musical theater and Barry Manilow records instead of playing basketball. So I think it was part of, that is definitely an autobiographical element that made its way into the book. the idea of going elsewhere to pursue your artistic dreams.
And some of those characters are not very happy. They've discovered that it's a little tough to find out who you are in a foreign place,
Yeah.
and with foreign expectations, and again the girls becoming young women. This happens in the Middle East a lot. I think in the Japan story as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this idea that you go someplace new and you fix your problems by virtue of being in a new place. And it's taken me decades to learn that that never really works. You know, there you are, wherever you end up.
Right.
So I think some of the stories point to that dilemma. And you know, a lot of the exile in this book is self-imposed. A lot of the characters are in these kind of tense, distraught situations by virtue of their own mistakes and their own foibles. And I think that's very human. And
I think there's you're looking for a little redemption in these stories of people discovering that, oh, this is not what I want, or this is what I want, but this is not what it appears to be. I think the belly dancing story gave me that impression.
Yeah.
Not the main character, but one of the other characters, the professional belly dancer. You know, that was there were some surprises in these stories that you as the reader you find something that, oh, that just snuck up on us. Oh, and Lara knew about it all the time. and she put it in there. You want to read some more another story or something?
Sure. And I'll read one that is certainly influenced by music, although it's not really about musicians as characters. When I was a lounge singer overseas, I was working 6 days a week, 4 hours a night, and that was the typical schedule. And it was all cover songs, and it was all largely requests. And the one song that was requested over and over and over again was Hotel California by the Eagles, which we probably all know. We probably all know the lyrics to that song, even if we don't think we do. So I had a lot of chances to think about the lyrics to this song. And I always wondered, what is it about? What is this song about? I don't get it. So I decided to write a story based on the lyrics to the song. It's called The Mission Bell. And if you don't remember, it starts on a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah. And maybe at some point down the line, I'll get Bobby to play it with me. Not right now, but
okay.
Yeah. On a dark desert highway, there's Lucy walking. Just off the highway, there's a motel sign pulsing red like a lighthouse. Lucy has no plan except to get there. She'll say, "My phone is dead. My Volvo is stuck 3 miles behind." She says this out loud to practice. There's wind from somewhere, light and persistent, though seconds ago it was still, just the sh of Lucy's Birkenstock scraping along the shoulder. She lost her elastic hairband, or it slid up her wrist to make an angry circle on her forearm. She lets the strands blow into her eyes and wishes for Joe, though they're supposed to be done. Are they done? He's in Fresno. He speaks over her, crashes into her sentences. Once he gripped her bicep and finger dots appeared the next day, a ring of proof, thrilling. The wind dies. Her watch glows in the dark. Who wears a watch anymore? She slips it off, hears it smack against the roadside for someone else to find. She thinks, there are movies that start this way. None of them end well.
Yeah, that's a very I want to find out the next paragraph. What's gonna happen, and is it gonna end okay? Because you give us that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the difference between these stories and I'm not sure when you wrote all these stories and when you wrote your two novels.
Yeah,
There are people who say that when I think I told you this, someone said, I only write short stories because I didn't have enough paper to write a novel, with a typewriter or something. But but these are like, what you want to talk a little bit about that? Maybe I have another question or two, but let's hear what you have to say about that.
sure. I think I prefer writing novels. I love the room and the messiness that a novel can encompass. There's lots of room for meandering and asides and parentheticals, and I think a short story has to be a very self-contained, succinct thing. It's as though every single word has to be considered. Which of course in a novel it does as well, but it feels as though the stakes are higher with short stories. I find them very, very difficult to write. And it's actually taken me 20 years to get this collection together. By that I mean some of the stories were written 20 years ago, some of them were written a year ago, but I don't write a lot of them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
But you feel like you want to write a short story. That's a different, it's a different message that you can bring across.
That's right. And I think certain ideas and certain topics lend themselves to short stories. Maybe there's a scene that's brewing around in my mind, and I know that is that can sort of be blown out into a short story, whereas there's probably not enough meat on that in that to sustain 200, 300 pages, to be sustained in 200, 300 pages. So sometimes it's just a gut feeling about what shape should this thing take. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I start a novel idea and think, wow, this is a short story. It's not a novel. And the opposite happens too.
So with the two novels, 1001 Nights and Off Island, they didn't begin as short stories though, did they?
No, no, they didn't.
Or was like the 1001 Nights is based on the 1001 Night short stories?
Well, the title came after I had a wonderful professor in my graduate program at Warren Wilson College, Judith Grossman, who named the book. She said, this has to be called 1001 Nights. And in 1001 Nights, it's autobiographical fiction, and it's much, much more about the time that I worked on a cruise ship and I worked as a lounge singer. And the idea is that night after night after night, these two people who don't really like each other are performing on stage, and what that does to a person. I don't recommend it, by the way.
Should we ask Sarah what she thinks about some of these stories?
Sure. I don't.
Hey, it wasn't me.
We're not going to put you on the spot.
No, it wasn't her. No, Sarah is a gem, but it wasn't her. So yeah, I guess it's just a different instinct, short stories versus novels. But I have to say, I find novels easier. I like the space and the room to experiment and move around a little bit more instead of watching my every sentence to make sure I'm on task.
So this brings us to the next question: are you writing a novel now?
I am. I am. I'm working on 2 books at the moment. I'm almost done with a new novel, and it's something very new for me. It's speculative fiction. So I imagine that the world turned out in a slightly different way than it actually is. In this case, I imagine that all paper has been banned, which means that
you don't have to tell us too much. A writer doesn't have to,
I know.
There are, the books that you write and the books you talk about that don't get read. So I don't want you to dilute your experience here, but I just wanted to know a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that book is nearly done. I'm just doing some final edits on it, and I will hopefully be shopping it around soon, or my agent will. And the other book is just really in the very early research phases, and it's a memoir slash biography, because it's about my father, Stan Tupper, who served in Congress in the 1960s, and had a tremendously interesting life that I tuned out my entire life. And so selfishly, part of the project is to know him better, but to also investigate my relationship to my father, who passed away several years ago. So so I'm working on that. There's research to be done, and I'm excited about where that book might go. It always helps me to have a few projects going on at the same time, because day to day I might not be so invested in one, but chances are I'll be invested in the other. So that's a
well,
little trick I use.
what's the story in Amphibians where your dad is? Which story is that?
There is a former congressman
Yeah.
mentioned in
They're
Amphibians.
good neighbors.
It's sort of woven through a few different stories. So
Yeah.
but
I like him. I
oh,
like
good.
I like your dad. I like the dad. I've gotten to know him, and I want to know a little more. So I'm going to be curious as to your project and finding out who he is and who you are to him.
Thank you. I'm excited about that too. Yeah, I liked him as well. So glad to hear that.
Do you write every day?
Ooh, that's the idea. On paper, officially I do, but in reality I don't. I like to write first thing in the morning when I'm sort of fuzzy, and there hasn't been time for too much to sink in terms of duties like laundry or dishes or chickens. We have chickens, by the way, so they take up a lot of our time. Very grateful for them, so not complaining. But I like to write first thing in the morning, and it doesn't always happen. I often get distracted by emails or various life things. But I do try to write every day, just to remind myself, oh yeah, there's this project. If I away from it for too long, I tend to lose momentum. So that's the idea. But I teach writing workshops online now, and part of the project in the workshops is to write for very short snippets of time. And they say you teach what you need to learn, and that is certainly something that I try to do. If I don't have an hour to write, I try to write for 20 minutes and not talk myself out of the writing practice because I don't have the time. So that's my spiel. Hopefully I'll follow it more frequently.
It's however you come to it and however much you accomplish it, it's an inspiration for all creative people to do something for whether it's 20 minutes a day or 20 lines a day, or just not be distracted. Make sure that you're not distracted, but you let wherever the chickens are going, you have to stay at your desk or at the kitchen counter, wherever you are.
That's right.
So besides writing, are you reading anything that you like that you want to tell us some?
Yeah, I am. I'm very grateful. I belong to two book clubs at the moment, and one is the Berkshire Historical Society Book Club, and there are a few members here today. So hello, good to see your faces. And we read books by Berkshire writers. And I'm a new member, but I love it. I love having the chance to talk about what I'm reading. It's just such a lovely gift. So we just read Summer by Edith Wharton. I reread it, and it was lovely to talk about. And I'm also in a book club, and we're reading Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I recommend that everybody read. I think it's an important book to be reading right now, and so helpful to be talking about it with other readers. I can't wait to read Kazuo Ishiguro's new book, Clara and the Sun. That is my next to read book.
I've sold out, and I haven't been able to get any copies for over a week.
Wow. Yeah, he's one of my favorite writers, so I can't wait for that. And I just read a lovely book by Maine writer Susan Conley called Landslide. And part of the appeal for me is it's based on the song by Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. And it begins with that song, so that I was entranced right away. But it's about Maine and the decision to leave Maine or stay in Maine, and it was very close to home, and it's beautifully written. So that was one I really treasured.
I was a lot of times when I'm reading something, I'll read it out loud to myself. Do you read out loud to yourself your books you're reading? Or which brings me to the next question is, do you read out loud the books that you're writing? Have you ever tried any of that?
I definitely read out loud what I'm writing, usually towards the end of the sort of editing process, just to hear how everything sounds. It's always informative to read out loud from a book for events like this, because you catch certain rhythms or certain words that either are working or not working. And so I definitely do that. But I don't read out loud the books that I'm reading. I mean, I like to hear other people read them. I like audiobooks now and then, but yeah, I don't do that. Maybe I'll try. You like to do that?
Well, as a bookseller, we have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I can't read, Ulysses or something like some tough prose," and
Right.
so I'll recommend that they read it out loud,
Yeah.
and it helps me so not to lose myself in between the lines. So I recommend it. So it's just something that occurred to me.
Yeah, interesting.
May I, this is Catherine. I wondered if I could put in my 2 cents. I'm in the Becket, the book club. And last month we were reading How to Be an Anti-Racist. And I think uniformly we had trouble with it, that it was very like wordy and repetitive. But the outcome was our realizing that to be an anti-racist means that when you're noticing somebody behaving in a certain way or whatever, you just notice that that person is doing that, but you don't say, oh, that Black person or that Asian person or that white person or whatever. It's just, we're all people regardless of our ethnicity or our racial background or whatever, and we behave in certain ways, and we should just be recognized for whatever we're doing or doing or not doing, whether it's positive or negative, without the observer branding it, like that's a Black person, that's an Asian.
This is what we learned from Kendi's book. It's a very important mirror to ourselves in our society and the history of the world.
It gives good guidance.
Jody, do we want to? What would we like to do now? Do we want other people to ask Lara any questions? We didn't really talk about this. Or are we just about? Or are we ready? Are we ready for the final question, which is, hey, where can I get this book?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked, Matt. I recommend, if you'd like to buy the book, to please support the bookstore in Lenox, Massachusetts, Matt's wonderful store. So they can find all the information on your website. Is that right, Matt?
Well, to find to not specifically each book, but yeah, you can call or email. You can't buy anything on the website. We're not set up that way, but you can call or write to us via the website, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. And we do have, and as I said yesterday, the books arrived just in the nick of time. We were waiting, and they finally showed up. So, and we do have copies of the other two books as well. So
It's
I think that just takes us through it.
Yeah, and
I wanted to just ask if Lara could just read a little bit more. I would love to hear more from her book since I haven't read it.
There are a couple of people asking for that, Lara.
Sure. I'd be glad to. I think since we ended up talking about cruise ships, I will read a little bit from a cruise ship story. This is called Ting, and I'll just read the first paragraph or so. Thanks for asking, Laura and others. Ting. Sam lowers herself into the water taxi, now crammed with pale tourists. You're the dancer, says a large woman in a tie-dyed blouse. The can, legs. The woman extends her own leg, pats her thigh. She moves her straw bag to make room. Sam offers her sober face. She doesn't have to speak to passengers today. She positions her sunglasses and wills the woman to be silent. $3, says the boat guy, the skipper, when exactly 20 passengers have been packed in. He collects the bills neatly, rubbing out creases, lining up heads and tails. He makes change without looking at faces. But when Sam gives him money, his lips twitch, as if he's about to laugh or holler. He pushes the wad deep into the pocket of his cutoffs and lets the motor roar, just as a man in a gleaming MS Sunbeam cap springs to the edge of the landing. So that's a little cruise ship excerpt for you. I see Sarah Dyer laughing. I think she recognizes the place. Thank you. Thumbs up.
Yeah, that was a story that is one of these. Well, they all are, but specifically self-propelled. That is that first section, and then you know something is going to happen after that.
So if I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, but I'm happy to answer any if there are, or anyone wants to unmute themselves, I'm happy to.
Sure, I'll ask you one. When you were becoming a writer, which writers did you read in search of how to do it?
That's a great question. I'm still figuring out how to do it. It's an ongoing question and process. But when I was at the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson in Asheville, North Carolina, a program that really helped me. I was guided by some wonderful supervisors. One of them was Joan Silber, and I have since read everything that she's written. She has a new book coming out soon, and I'm going to do an event with her on Thursday, the 25th, via Print Bookstore in Maine. Looking forward to that. I love her work, and she writes linked short stories often, and the way that she connects the stories is just ingenious. So I can't say that I do what she does, but I certainly am influenced and awed by what she does. So many writers I admire. When I'm working on nonfiction essays, I tend to read a lot of nonfiction. One book that I've read recently that's really influenced me in terms of how to put something together is The Yellow House by Sarah Broom. Just an incredible memoir about New Orleans and her time there and her family there. And as I try to piece together my own memoir / biography about my father, I'm trying to look at inventive ways to put things together. So she's someone who comes to mind recently in terms of, wow, how do I do that? I think that's my instinct when I read something and I'm just kind of amazed by how the writer does it. I want to know how they do it. So there's reading the first time through for pleasure, and then there's reading the second time through. How do they construct this thing? And is it possible to glean anything that I might do myself? It sort of veered from your question, but I hope that that's
That's a great question. That was one of the questions that we were gonna pursue, the process of your own writing, and how do you get from this place to that place? Anybody else have a question?
Oh, can I read out loud a comment I see here? This is from Sarah Dyer, my cruise ship buddy. Ting is the best soft drink, Jamaican fizzy grapefruit, perfect for a beach day and lethal with a sting of rum. Yes, that comes up, Sarah, in the story, indeed. So thank you for the hint. And I see a question in the chat from Mark, who is from Wesleyan, class of 95. I believe he's here still. When do you know when you're done writing a story / novel or done editing your writing? That's an excellent question. I often don't know. I'm one of those people that, I read something I wrote a long time ago and I want to change it. So it's the lesson in kind of letting it go. This represents who I was at this time in my life. And now I'm moving on. So I'm not sure I ever know. It's a lovely, I'm someone who sends out, short stories when I'm writing them for, publication. I send them out constantly. And I think there's a tremendous sense of validation, affirmation when a story is accepted and published. That's when you can sort of feel, oh, it's done. Someone else likes it. I can move
Right.
on.
Somebody else says yes, right.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's the best way to actually go about it.
Can I just say that Degas said about art that you are never done, you just give up.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny. That's a positive take on all of this. Yeah. No, I can certainly relate to that. There comes a time when you think, all right, I'm not adding anything to this. And I think if I'm being honest, there's a sense sometimes that I'm actually subtracting from this by editing. I'm over editing and I need to let it go. So there's certainly some truth to that. Thank you.
I have a question. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Matt and Lara and the library. It's been such a great conversation. It makes me want to read the book even more. But I wanted to ask, just from as writer to writer, and it's maybe specific to the pandemic, I'm not quite sure, but I'm just wondering, like, when you're in a book project, I mean, obviously there's like times when, for me, when I feel really positive and I believe in it, and then other times where that starts to wane. And I just wondered if you could talk about sort of in that interior sense, how you push through those times.
Yeah. Huh. Thanks, Laura, for that question.
Don't you have the answer?
Yeah. Huh is my response. This past year has been interesting in terms of pushing through. I've realized this year, if I didn't realize before, that I'm an introvert by nature, and the idea of kind of hunkering down and being inside a lot and seeing fewer people, it's not ideal all the time, but it's very well suited to projects. And I think it's kept me occupied this year in a way that's been helpful. When I don't have that outside pressure, what do I do? I'm someone who feels a lot of guilt when I don't work on something that I'm supposed to be working on, when I have a lot of slacker guilt. And so I guess that's what propels me through. I don't know.
That's a perfect answer.
Okay, that's
the most honest. Yeah,
being honest, but it's something to think about. I'll try to get a better answer to you shortly. I want to just pop in to say that putting the book out is such a group effort, and I want to thank publisher Leapfrog Press and Can of Worms Press and Mary Bisbee Beek, who has just been a wonderful source of support and enthusiasm throughout all of this, and my agent Stacia Decker, and all the people that have championed this book during a hard time to put a book out. I'm very grateful. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Lara.
Hey, Gail, that's my Aunt Gail, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
I just want to say, number one, you already know how proud I am of you. And I've loved all your different books because they all had such a different perspective. And even though you're my niece, it taught me a lot about the writer. I just have one complaint about all of them, the fact that they had to end.
Oh,
I didn't like having to come to the end and at the end of another book, but great job, honey. So proud of you.
thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that. Thank you, Gail. Well, perhaps we should leave it there. I'm grateful to Jody and Ellen at the Becket Library, Becket Athenaeum, my local library. It's a thrill to be here virtually, and hopefully we'll get to hang out in the actual library soon. So thank you.
And Lara, if you don't get your copy soon, come by here. I'll give you this one to bring to the library. So there's one there as soon as possible.
Oh,
You can repay me another time
okay.
when you get your copies.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. And I so appreciate your willingness and your excellent questions. Thank you for,
Well, thank you.
Thank you for all of this.
Okay.
And I
everybody.
want to thank both of you, Lara and Matt, for joining us. I loved the question and answer and discussion between the two of you. I found it dynamic and fun to watch, and the questions were great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget, you can share the link I put in the chat. If you have others who didn't get to join us today, they can watch it after the fact, and visit Matt at the Lenox Bookstore, as we all love to do.
Great.
And Lara, a pleasure as always. And Mary, thank you for helping coordinate everything for Lara's reading with us today. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate this.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody. Be
Thank you.
well. Happy
you.
spring. Happy
Lara,
frog
see you
day.
soon.
Oh,
Hey.
here's a cookie. Everybody take a
Yum.
cookie on your way out.
Oh, thanks. We'd like to have one of those.
Oh, cookie.
Okay.
You'll have to have them for us, Lara.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Great
Thank
job.
you. It was wonderful. Thank
Bye,
you.
Jess.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.